Namaste, friends, and welcome back to the podcast. Before we get into this week's episode, I just want to have a moment to shout out to any of the mamas out there who are sending their first child off to college for the first time. This is my experience. My daughter will be leaving next week for college, several states away from us, and all the emotions are running high. It's a big transition. There's so much changing and it's a lot. So if that's you, know that I am with you. I see you. We're in this together, and I'm sending you lots of love to your mama heart for helping you get through this very, very big change in both your life, your everyday life, your role as a parent, the dynamics of your family. Everything is about to shift. And so it's a lot. Give yourself grace, give yourself time, allow yourself to feel all of the feelings that you need to feel, and be patient with yourself. And speaking of feelings, this episode is about one particular feeling, and that is the feeling of anger. If you read the episode title, we are answering the question, can I be both angry and spiritual? And for a long time, I actually didn't think that I could, or that anyone could, that if you were evolved enough, enlightened enough, that the emotion of anger would no longer arise. But I don't believe that anymore. That was something that I think I kind of made up. But when I dove further into the teachings of yoga philosophy, I saw how that actually isn't true. And that anger is actually a beautiful guide on our journey if it's used appropriately. So that's what we're going to talk about today. We're going to talk about why we may have decided that it was not okay to be angry, or that it was wrong to be angry, how we can allow ourselves to be angry and move through the process of being angry, and also how we can use anger constructively, because I'm sure we have all had, or many of us have had, scenarios where we did become angry and we let the anger overwhelm us. And in the process, we said and did things that didn't help the situation and we may have regretted. And that's very different than what I'm talking about. The anger of emotion is a beautiful, actually spiritual emotion, and we'll talk about why. But how we use it, it's any emotion is energy, and how we use that energy is extremely important. And it can either move us away from ourselves or closer to ourselves. So of course, we want to try to always be moving closer to ourselves and closer to our truth, and closer to our soul. And anger actually is a beautiful way of doing that. So we're going to talk about all of that today. But before we dive in, I want to remind you that my coaching program is still on a 40% discount. Anyone who signs up with me during the month of September will receive that 40% discount. So it takes the coaching from $3,000 to $1,800 for either of my 3-month containers. It doesn't matter which one you pick. You just have to start in September. So if you've been thinking about coaching, you've been on the fence, money's been a little bit of a barrier, here is a beautiful opportunity to get in on the program for a significant discount. I decided to do this, if you haven't listened to a previous episode, because the podcast celebrated 3 years last week. And I decided, how you put on a birthday cake, there you put an extra candle that represents growth for the following year. So instead of a 30% discount, we're doing a 40% discount. So it's a great opportunity. If you're interested, please book a free clarity call. I'll put the link in the show notes, but it's also on my website. We can have a quick chat about what you're interested in accomplishing through coaching, how my program works, and see if it feels like a good fit for you. All right, my friends, now on to this episode on anger. Okay, so let's start this out with a reflection. I love a good reflection. I think that it's really so important when we are doing this deeper work. So we're talking about the emotion of anger today, and I would love for you to reflect on your relationship with anger. Are you comfortable with it, uncomfortable with it? Do you easily express your anger, or do you tend to shove it down and hide it and pretend like it doesn't exist? Do you feel badly after you get angry, or you feel fine? You have no problem with expressing the emotion or feeling the emotion of anger. And how do you think your current relationship with anger is related to the way that you were raised and the time in which you were raised? So, as midlife women, it is fairly common for us to have a difficult relationship with anger. We grew up in a time period where a woman being or a girl being angry was considered undesirable, un um, unacceptable. And we may have been told and received lots of messages about the fact that our anger was not okay. And how we internalize those messages and what we did with them will determine your current relationship with anger. So it is very useful to reflect back on what you were told or what you absorbed about being angry as a woman or as a girl, and how that informs your current relationship with anger. So I'll leave that there. The episode is not going to be about that, but I think it's a really, really useful exercise to do. So I want to invite you to think about that and maybe journal on it, because it will help you to establish a healthy relationship with anger, which is very important. And we're going to talk about why in this episode. So the episode title is, can I be angry and spiritual? And the answer to that question is yes. You can be angry and spiritual at the same time. In fact, anger is considered a sacred emotion. And when we suppress our anger, or we don't allow ourselves to fully understand what it's here to teach us, we are actually pulling ourselves further away from ourselves, from God, because our anger is a messenger. It's one of the universal teachers that exists out there, that is sent to us to help us come back into alignment. So I somehow absorbed the message. When I was young, I was told my anger was not okay. Then I became a spiritual teacher and dove into this world of yoga and yoga philosophy. And no one ever told me that anger was not okay. But somehow I guess I must decided on my own that if I were evolved enough, that if I were enlightened, that I would never experience anger. And I have come to realize that the spiritual practice is not to transcend our anger. It's not even to rush to release it. It is to fully feel it in our bodies and in our minds, and to listen for what it is trying to teach us so that we can choose how to respond. So in yoga, there are the 10 ethical guidelines, the yamas and the niyamas. And these are 10 suggestions for how to live a life of freedom, a life where we transcend the small self and we live from the capital S self, from our soul. And one of those is satya, or truthfulness. And anger often arises when a truth has been denied. So we may experience anger when a boundary has been crossed, when a need has gone unmet, when something unjust has happened, when we've abandoned ourselves to preserve the peace, and when we're living out of alignment for what we know is true. These are very common ways that anger shows up. And it's basically saying, essentially, all anger is saying, this is not okay. That is what your anger is telling you. And our job is to turn back around and to look at the anger and ask, why is it not okay? What is happening here that my soul is telling me, is trying to show me that this is not truth for me, that this is pulling me away from the truth of who I am. And I really want to invite you to think about the language or the verbiage you use when you are expressing any emotion. So for many of us, we say, I am. I am angry. I am happy. I am sad. I am excited, right? I am. But that language often, it reinforces the concept that we are the emotion rather than we are experiencing the emotion. So I really invite you to say, I am feeling angry, or I am experiencing anger, or I have anger in me. These are ways that you can get a little bit of space between you and the anger. And why is that important? Why is that space important? It's important because we want our anger to teach us and to help us to live in satya, to live in truthfulness. But when our anger overwhelms us, it clouds our ability to discern what needs to happen, right? And what the anger is actually about. And instead, it just creates more suffering. And we have all seen that happen. Maybe we've done it ourselves when someone just completely loses control and they really just cause themselves more suffering and cause other people more suffering, and nothing was improved by their anger. That is not the type of anger that I am encouraging here. The kind I'm encouraging is the kind that we can fully feel and experience without harming ourselves or anyone else. And so the second concept here in yoga philosophy I want you to think about is ahimsa. So it's another one of those yamas, and it means non-harming. So when we are angry, we don't want to harm anyone else, of course, but we also don't want to harm ourselves. And when we shove anger down and pretend like it's not there, right? When we stay silent to keep the peace, or when we do lose our cool and blow up at someone, or when we don't speak our truth or we don't set a boundary, then we are harming ourselves. We are not living the guideline of ahimsa. So anger does two things. It points us towards our truth, and it also tells us when we may need to do something to prevent ourselves from being harmed. And anger is just an energy, just like any other emotion, but it's a really strong energy, and it has the power to destroy. And it also has the power to protect and to make beautiful change in our lives. So that's the switch that needs to be flipped in your relationship with anger, or may need to be flipped, is this idea that yes, anger can be destructive. Anger can be harmful. Anger can be bad. Anger can also be sacred and beautiful because it points me towards my truth. It gives me the fire I need to make change. And it gives me the ability to appropriately protect myself, to not cause harm to myself. It also gives courage, right? When we're really angry, we get the courage to do what we need to do. And so properly harnessing your anger is a sacred act. So how do we do that? How do we properly harness our anger? I think most often, the first step is going to the body. Every emotion we feel gets flooded into our body, right? And we experience the sensations of being angry. I don't know about you, for me, Anger is probably the most uncomfortable emotion that I experience. I think it might be worse than fear, personally, for me. It is so unpleasant. And for most people, it is a very unpleasant sensation in the body. And if you take a moment and think about the last time you were angry, you can probably recall the sensations that you experienced in your body at that time. And typically, people deal with it in one of two ways. They either blow up, which allows that energy to be somewhat released. Unfortunately, it can be released on other people and cause harm, but internally you feel a little better, right? We release some of that energy. Or the opposite of that, sometimes people will shove it down. They don't want to feel what that feels like in their body. And so they try to just kind of push it all the way down, stick a lid on it, lock it, and pretend like it doesn't exist. Neither are great options. So, what I'm encouraging you to do is go to the body, fully feel the sensations, stay present with them. I know it's uncomfortable, but really allow yourself to feel them. Where are they? What do they feel like? What is actually happening, right? Am I clenching my muscles? Is my heart racing? Do I have the urge to push something away? Is there pressure in my chest? Do I feel hot, right? These are all common experiences, physical experiences of anger. So really go to the anger. Say, I am experiencing anger. If you can get enough space, I'm experiencing anger. I feel it in my body. This is what it feels like. What does my body need? Is the next question. So, for some of you, your body might need to, to find a constructive way to release that pressure, that energy. Maybe it's going for a run or screaming into a pillow or jumping up and down and shaking your arms and your legs or putting on like a rock song and dancing it out. You can decide how maybe that anger wants to escape your body in a constructive way. For other people, they may feel the opposite. They may feel like this energy feels so strong and so overwhelming. I just want it to calm down. And so maybe you want to put your feet in the grass for some grounding, or your whole body, lay in the grass. Or maybe you want to take some really long, slow, deep breaths. Maybe you want to go into the woods and take a walk and be surrounded by nature, or maybe just a public park or anywhere where you feel that you're being enveloped by nature. Maybe you want to just close your eyes and visualize something that brings you peace and calm, mountains, ocean, something like that. But kind of notice what your body needs, right? Does it need that more energetic release of anger? Does it need a more calming technique? And then allow your body to have it. I can't express how important it is to follow what your body is telling you it needs. How much this helps to process the anger, to get the space that is required to see what's underneath of it. So we're going to use different language. We're going to say, I'm experiencing anger. We're going to go to our bodies and say, what does it feel like? And fully be with the sensations, even though they're unpleasant, right? Just a few seconds. You don't have to linger there forever, but give yourself 30 seconds to fully feel. Then Viveka, discern, what does my body need, and allow your body to have it, right? Do what it's calling for. Don't push it away. Then maybe you can start looking under the hood. What is this anger here to teach me? Why? Why did I get so angry about this particular situation? And is it mine to carry? More discernment, right? So sometimes we are trying to control people and situations and outcomes that aren't ours to control. And that's because we're too attached, right? We're stuck in the mode of attachment. And when anger shows up in that circumstance, we may have to find a way of releasing it and also release the attachment. And that's really all that needs to be done. But if the anger is showing up because somehow it's violating your truth, now you have to decide, do I need to set the boundary? Do I need to have the difficult conversation? Do I need to choose to take a particular action, even though it's scary and unpleasant and might disrupt the peace? Um, so this is what comes after you're able to fully move the anger through your body. Then you can start asking these questions and get to the truth, that is there and what needs to be done about it. And this is the difference between allowing anger to be destructive and allowing it to be protective and to steer you back to your truth and to give you the courage and the energy that you need to create change in your life. So go to your body, feel the feelings, find a way to release them, ask the questions about what's beneath this anger. And I'll put some questions in the show notes that you can ask yourself, like what feels violated or threatened, or what am I protecting, or what truth have I been afraid to speak? Where have I said yes when I've meant no? What am I trying to control? What boundary or action is this anger asking me to consider? These are all great questions, but you don't really need them. If you can get still and quiet enough, likely the answer will rise up. And then choose your response. And choose it knowing that you want to honor both satya, truthfulness, and ahimsa, non-harming. Non-harming to yourself, non-harming to someone else. Whenever you say something, it should basically pass through 3 filters. And if it doesn't, then you shouldn't say it. And the filters are, is it truthful? Is it necessary? And is it loving? And that last one tripped me up for a long time because I thought, well, then you can't ever say anything difficult, right? Because then isn't that not loving? But anything that is truthful and prevents harm is loving. So if you do have to set that boundary or have that difficult conversation, use those 3 filters. Is this truthful? Is it necessary? And is it loving? And if you use that as your guide to have difficult conversations, they will come through from truth. They will come from truth, right? Instead of I just want to hurt you because you hurt me. I want to prove my point. I want to be better than. I want to, right? These are all things that drive sometimes the conversations that we have and the things that we say. But if what we have to say is driven by truth and non-harming, then it will always be the right thing to say. Okay, so I hope this made it clear that spirituality is not the absence of anger, that anger is actually sacred. And it's really about being willing to meet our anger with presence and space so that instead of it destroying or harming ourselves or other people, it actually helps us to grow. And it becomes a doorway to our truth and a protector of what is sacred and the energy we need to create meaningful change in our lives. I would love to hear what you think about this. I'd love to hear your relationship with anger, how you have dealt with anger throughout your life and where you think that came from. And if you want to do a little practice with this, A great practice is to reflect back on a recent experience where you were angry. And maybe maybe it hasn't fully processed. Maybe you're still carrying it with you. If you are, even better, because it'll probably create a more visceral response, which will be easier to do this exercise. But reflect back on a moment where you were angry and just notice that the anger is there. And maybe even say, I had anger at that moment or at that time, or I experienced anger at that time. Then go into the body. What did you feel like in your body? What did your body need? And did you give it to your body or did you not give it to your body? And then listen to what is beneath the anger. What was the anger trying to teach you, show you, protect? What did it want you to know? And then discern when you get the answer, was it something that belonged to me or was it not? And if it was something that belonged to you, what response would honor both satya and ahimsa? What would honor your truth and not harm you or anyone else? And is that the response that you chose? And if it wasn't, that's okay, because we get to choose again. That's the beautiful part of this journey, is that we get to choose again. We get to go back. We get to make amends. We get to repair. We get to set a boundary that wasn't set before. We get to speak our truth, even if we didn't in the past. It's not over, right? Just because the inciting incident is over doesn't mean we can't go back and make changes. We can tell someone we need to have a conversation with them that we should have had when the event happened, right? We can say, remember when that thing happened? I never want that to happen again. So here's the boundary. We can say, I've been filled with resentment, right? And resentment is just a simmering form of anger for all these years because I haven't spoken my truth. And so here it is. Here is my truth. I need you to know it, right? We get the freedom to do that. So give yourself that freedom. Give yourself that gift of choosing again and choosing what is your truth and what prevents you from experiencing harm. All right, friends. As always, I hope this was helpful to you. Please reach out, questions, comments. I love to hear from you. So always reach out, Instagram, Substack, email, any and all of the above. I'd love to hear from you. And once again, for you mamas sending your child off to college, if you just recently sent or are sending soon, I am with you and we're in this together. It's going to be okay. We just have to ride the wave of this transition and all the emotions that come with it. So everything that I told you here about anger applies for every single emotion. Notice you're feeling it. Go to the body, fully experience it. Ask what the body needs in that moment. And then listen for what it's trying to teach you, discern if it's yours or not, and then choose how to respond. And in some situations, maybe there is no response, right? If you're experiencing sadness or grief because your child left for college, maybe you just need to, I use this expression with my friends. Hopefully I don't go too far with you guys, but sit in the dirty diaper, right? We gotta sit and mush around in the dirty diaper. Like, it's unpleasant, it's uncomfortable, but there's really nothing to do other than allow ourselves to feel it. So that may be the answer, and that's okay too. All right, I love you all so much. Namaste. Have a beautiful week.